Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Kisoranandana Brajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajanarandana Jamuna Tira Banajari Jamuna Tira Banajari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Sodanandana Brajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajanarandana Jamuna Tira Banajari Jamuna Tira Banajari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Sodanandana Brajanarandana Yashodanandana Brajanarandana Jamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayarada Marva Punjabihari Jaya Radha Marva Punjabihari Jaya Radha Marva Punjabihari Jai Nitalila Vishnu Prabhupada Divine Grace Lacey Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Ananda Guri Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Sri Rup Sanatana Patragana Sri Jeev Gopalava Das Ragana Sadgoswami Prabhu Ki Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Go Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Brajabhumi Vrindavan Dham Ki Srila Prabhupada Leela Mrita Ki Jai Go Premanande Sri Sri Krishna Baldao Ki All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to you, Srila Prabhupada. That's what they give me. And I see. Okay, so we're reading Srila Prabhupada Leelamrit, the chapter Jhansi, the League of Devotees, where Prabhupada is just about to lose the Bharati Bhavan. I've been there. It's a nice place. Radha Memorial is still there. Suryamukhi, assured of support by the governor's wife, called on A.C. Bhaktivedanta. She explained that his League of Worldwide Vaishnavas would never take shape. He was a nice person, she liked him, but she didn't think he could realize his extraordinary expectations. She suggested he vacate the Bharati Bhavan so that the governor's wife could organize a women's social center. You can go here and there for the sake of building a temple, she told him. You are free to travel anywhere, but these poor women in Jhansi have nothing, so they must be given these buildings for their use. She found him adamantly opposed. No, Abai said, find another building. Abai argued that his work was not just for a section of people, but for all living beings. Suryamukhi left frustrated. Abai was surprised that a member of the League of Devotees was now working against him, and the maneuver was being backed by the governor's wife. Mrs. Munshi could work at much more influential level without having to confront Abai directly, and without even his knowing what she was doing. After she talked with Mr. Bayal, and word got around that Mr. Bayal had been pressured to persuade Abai Charan to relinquish his claim on the Bharati Bhavan. Mr. Bayal owned a cinema house in Jhansi, and there was talk that he could have a lot of difficulty with his operator's license unless Abhay Charan vacated the Radha Memorial. In December 1954, Mrs. Munshi wrote for Abhay in reference to his failure to raise the 5,000 rupees. Dear Bhaktivedanta Ji, she wrote, you wanted to organize there, but you could not. But I have got this institution, Mahila Samiti. Why not give it to me? Abhay was of a mind to resist. He had lawyer friends who had advised him that even though he was opposed by the governor's family, he had a good case that would stand up well in court. India's tradition of respect for religious buildings was on his side. Abhay replied to Mrs. Munshi, introducing himself as the founder of the League of Devotees. He explained the goal of the League, enclosed a copy of its prospectus, and presented many statements by prominent people. Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Sri Sitaram, Raja Mahendra Pratap, even her husband, Sri K.M. Munshi, praising the wonderful work of the League of Devotees. He also mentioned that the president of the League had recently received a 100 rupee donation in Mathura from His Excellency the Governor, Mr. Munshi himself. Abhay said, although work had been going on slowly but peacefully in Jhansi, his mind had now been bothered by Mrs. Munshi's negotiations. He requested her not to pressure anyone about his occupying the Bharati Bhavan. Though he admitted, if you or any one of your agents do try, the pressure will be more weightful. I am a non-entity in that comparison. But I hope that by presenting the details of his league, she would understand that his was a better cause than the Mahila Samiti. He quoted the first 3 verses of the 4th canto of 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, wherein Krishna describes how the ancient science of Bhakti Yoga is received through parampara, the order of succession from one teacher to the next. Now kings are responsible for seeing that Krishna consciousness spreads for everyone's benefit. He also argued that since according to Bhagavad Gita, only a few amongst thousands and thousands of men endeavor for self-realization, and since the League of Devotees engaged its members in self-realization, he was providing an important and rare service. He offered to meet with Mr. Munshi, along with some 15 sannyasis from the area, and suggested that she work cooperatively with them and understand the importance of the League. The League of Devotees was benefiting all classes. As Sri Krishna had said in Bhagavad Gita, even one of low birth can attain the shelter of the Supreme Lord. But the Mahila Samiti, Abhay pointed out, was based on bodily conceptions of caste, creed, color, and sex. Therefore, it could not be as important a cause. Abhay closed by requesting Mrs. Munshi not to try to occupy the Radha Memorial, which was already being used for a noble and well-appreciated cause. He signed A.C. Bhaktivedanta, founder and secretary, League of Devotees. Aware that he was involved in an intrigue, Abhay organized his thoughts and set down on paper a short history, outlining important events surrounding his possession of Bharati Bhavan. Short history. 1, I came to Jhansi sometime in October 1952. 2, I delivered some lectures at Gita Mandir on Gandhi Jayanti, 1952. 3, made acquaintance with Prabhakar Shastri. 4, my idea of League of Devotees implemented. 5, he took me to Reva Shankar for Bharati Bhavan. 6, Sri Reva Shankar agreed to hand over the Bharati Bhavan to the League of Devotees, and he agreed to become a member of it in the presence of Prabhakar, Mitraji, and myself. 7. I write letters from Allahabad to confirm. He confirmed my letter on 10/12/52. 9. Prabhakar intimated the desire of Reva Shankar on 1/1/53. 10. I got the document needed for the League of Devotees and came to Jhansi for signature of the members. Reva Shankar signed and agreed to become an executive member. 11. The document was submitted for registration on 4/2/53 at Lucknow. Return on 10/10/53. 12. The League of Devotees ceremoniously started 16/5/53 and work began. So I am occupying the building since then and continuing my work. Abai went on to enumerate more than 30 points, including news publicity and congratulations he had received. He listed the story of how he came from here sacrificing my business and family. I received a telegram from Allahabad instructing the news of burglary by breaking lock. I could not attend to the business for work here, and it was closed subsequently at a loss of rupees 7,000. Abai thought of turning to some of his sannyasi godbrothers for help. If he or they could purchase the buildings, his competitors would be silenced. He thought it would be worthwhile to interest his godbrothers in purchasing the buildings as an adjunct to their own missions. Vrindavan was not far away, a 4-hour train ride to Mathura, and then a short Tanga ride. He had gone there on pilgrimage in October of 1953 and had even looked at an available room in a temple near Keshigat with the idea of staying there someday. He had also traveled there several other times since he had begun residing in Jhansi. This time he went to the Imlitala temple to see his godbrother Bhakti Saranga Goswami and asked if he would take over the proprietorship of the Bharati Bhavan so that it might be used for preaching Krishna consciousness according to the teachings of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. But Bhakti Saranga Goswami was not interested. After approaching another godbrother, Damodar Maharaj, who was also not interested in Jhansi, Abai took the short Tanga ride back to Mathura to see another godbrother, Keshava Maharaj. Keshava Maharaj was in Mathura with a group of his disciples to establish a center, but he had not yet located a suitable place. So when Abai told him about the buildings in Jhansi, he was interested. Abai and Keshav Maharaj composed a letter to Mr. Bayal presenting their requests and the aims of their movement, and then traveled to Jhansi in a group, Abai, Keshav Maharaj with his disciples. Keshav Maharaj and his party stayed for several days in Jhansi, holding kirtans and lectures. They had an appointment with Reva Shankar Bayal, but Mr. Bayal broke it, so they had to wait to see him on another day. Meanwhile, Keshava Maharaj had time to form an opinion of Jhansi and discuss with Abai the likelihood of making this his headquarters. He noted that the people were receptive, but that the location was too remote. Even before meeting with Mr. Bayal, Keshav Maharaj felt reluctant to stake his whole mission in Jhansi. Abai agreed, aware that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati has said that a preacher should go to the big cities and not practice his bhajan in seclusion. And he admitted that after 2 years in Jhansi, he had made no full-time followers. When they finally met with Mr. Bayal failed to present clear terms for purchasing the property. He said they were eligible to buy it, but he made their use of the buildings conditional. He wanted to have a say in the nature of the programs they would hold. Abai knew that this was just a further sign of shady dealings, and he suspected that Mr. Bayal was under the mounting pressure to give the buildings over to the Mahila Society. Keshav Maharaj, having lost all interest, decided to go back to Mathura, and he invited Abai to join him. But Abai remained. Mr. Bayal wanted him out and even returned Abai's deposit of 210 rupees, claiming that Abai now had no justification for residing at Bharati Bhavan. Abai noted down the latest events in his short history. He also gave me a check for 210 in lieu of my deposit money with him. But he has no money in the bank. The bank has returned it with remark. 30. The money which was given to him was misappropriated by him for his own purpose, and now he has given a false check with an arrangement with the bank. 31. It is plain cheating to me from the beginning to end. 32. I must be compensated for all the money before I can leave the buildings. But he saw it as the inscrutable will of Krishna. Events and opinions were turning against him, conducting a mission in Jhansi. It no longer seemed auspicious. Srila Prabhupada says, I wanted to start from there. It was a nice big house. It was not given to me rightly, but I was using. So somehow or other she got imagination that this house is very nice. She was the governor's wife. Through collector and through government officials, she made pressure. So of course, there were many lawyer friends, and they advised me, you do not give up. But I thought, who's going to litigate? I thought, I have left my home, and now I should take up a litigation? No, I don't want this house. Abai remembered how the Gaudiya Math preachers had expended their energy for years in the courts. Having terminated his long entanglement with family and business, he had no taste for a legal fight. He could have fought, but he remembered what Keshav Maharaj had said about Jhansi's being out of the way. The whole thing had just sprung up here. Otherwise, Abai would never have chosen to establish his worldwide league of devotees in such an obscure place. The educated young men and women wished him well, just as they had good wishes for the Ladies' League, the Theosophy Society, the Arya Samaj, and many other causes. But their good intentions were certainly short of pure surrender and devotion. Even his one disciple could offer him only part-time help. But these considerations had not been sufficient to force him out. The real thing was that he was being driven out. Srila Prabhupada speaking, if I did not leave, nobody could drive me. That was a fact. But I thought, who is going to litigate these things? It is the governor's wife, and she is pressing through the collector. The manager was in charge. He had some cinema house, though they had to renew the license, and the collector pressed him that unless you arrange for this house, we're not going to renew your license. I thought, unnecessarily this man will be in trouble. I will have to pay many rupees, and she is the governor's wife. He decided to leave. He told his friends to carry on the League of Devotees in his absence. They were sad to see him go, yet even some of his friends openly praised the work of the Ladies' Society and were glad to see it come. They had not been able to help him financially, although they knew he had been unable to purchase the buildings on his own. His closer followers were more affected, but he assured them that their relationship would continue. He would write letters to them, Acharya Prabhakar, Radhidal Malik, Mr. Mitra, Dr. Shastri, and he gave them instructions on what they should do, especially Acharya Prabhakar. Abai had told him he would be calling him and expecting him to continue as secretary of the League of Devotees, even if they didn't make Jhansi their main residence. Yet it was obvious that this chapter of making ambitious plans for a world movement, going from house to house and village to village, performing Sankirtan, lecturing on Gita, distributing Vrindavan, this was ended. It was not likely that he return or that the residents of Jhansi could expect to see him again. When the Bhai left the Bharati Bhavan with the 6-foot-high lettering, Liga devotees painted across the outside wall, he felt sad. It had been a natural, spontaneous success for him. The young, educated people of Jhansi had looked up to him from the start, and it had not been for the intrigue, he would never have left. But he felt that he had no real choice. He had come as a family man on business and was leaving as a homeless vanaprast, forced to take shelter of Krishna. His plans were uncertain, but his desire was strong and his health good. So he moved on to Mathura, carrying with him the deity of Lord Chaitanya. So in the old days, I used to travel UP, MP, Rajasthan. So many times we went to Jhansi, and we saw that Bharati Bhavan, a little ways out of the city. Now, of course, the city has expanded and everything. And we stayed with Dr. Shastri. Dr. Shastri would become so emotional talking about Prabhupada. He showed me the room. He had kept it with Prabhupada's picture, and this was the Prabhupada Kamra, the Prabhupada room. And he was always praising Prabhupada so many times. He even came here to Vrindavan one time on Prabhupada's disappearance day and had some nice things to say. And he became so emotional talking about Prabhupada. And he showed me all the different places in Jhansi they used to go together, and told me many pastimes. Just near Jhansi there's a place, and now my COVID memory, I haven't thought about it for years. There's some big sarovars there, and almost 80% of the adrak, ginger in India, comes from that place. I just can't think of it now. He told a story how he went there with Prabhupada, and there's, outside the sarovar, there's all these little ponds where everybody bathes, because it's supposed to have some medicinal value. And they're on different levels. So Prabhupada was on a higher level, and Dr. Shastri was down below. And somehow, Dr. Shastri had a funny look at his face. He started to imitate an ape to make Prabhupada laugh. And he just said Prabhupada was laughing, just his sides were about to break. He showed me many places. And I also met Acharya Prabhakar. He was the first disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Later on, he became mixed up with, who was that controversial figure, Chandra something Maharaj? I can't remember. That's way, way, way in the back in the 80s. Anyway, but he told me an amazing story. They wouldn't put it in the Leela-mrit because there's no way to, no one else happened to be there. Acharya Prabhakar was Prabhupada's first disciple. He was living there on the property with Prabhupada. And one night, he woke up and there was a little place, there was a little dome-like structure with pillars and some nice inscriptions around the bottom of the dome. And he said Prabhupada was just chanting and chanting and dancing and jumping. And he was so astonished. Somehow he came home late and he saw Prabhupada there in the Radha Memorial, and he was dancing and dancing like anything. And then he was sort of afraid to go before Prabhupada, so he stood there by one of the pillars and watched. Prabhupada was just leaping and leaping and dancing in ecstasy. And he saw that Prabhupada had this garland, and it was made out of the Mayapur kadamba flowers. You know, our kadamba flowers like this, but the Mayapur kadambas are very big, and they're not usually found around Jhansi. And Prabhupada had this big, long garland that stretched all the way to the ground. And he was dancing around, and finally Prabhupada became aware of Acharya Prabhakar standing there watching him, so he became a little self-conscious and stopped his chanting. And he asked Prabhupada, what happened? Nothing, I was just chanting. He said, where you got this garland? It's not important. Prabhupada wouldn't talk about it. Then the next day, he went to see Prabhupada in his room, and he was saying, Swamiji, this type of garland doesn't grow, this type of flower doesn't grow in Jhansi. Where did you get this? I'm very curious, because this scent from that garland, it filled the whole Radha Memorial. It was so divine. And the atmosphere last night was electric. You have to tell me what happened. And Prabhupada said he was doing kirtan, and suddenly a Krishna appeared before him. And he immediately ran to touch Krishna's feet, and Krishna took the garland from his neck and he placed it on Srila Prabhupada's neck, and when Prabhupada stood up from paying his obeisances, Krishna was gone. So nobody else, we can't confirm it with any third party, so the editors of this Leelamrit, they refused to put this in, but Acharya Prabhakar told many people this story. He also told me personally this story, and other people he told this story. He told this story even to the boys who were collecting material for Prabhupada Leelamrit, but they refused to put this in there. But it's an amazing story. And Dr. Shastri, he always used to just talk and talk and talk about Prabhupada. Of course, he is no more. And I don't know what happened to that place. It had some, he showed me, there were all these sort of Muslim style architectural decorations around the wall in that building. And he showed me how Abai used to smash those. And it was definitely, as Keshav Maharaj surmised, it was way out of the way. Jhansi's in this little tongue of UP that hangs down into UP, and not very frequented place, and obviously wasn't the place to start a worldwide movement, but it was Prabhupada got some experience. But this was his first endeavor. And I remember Dr. Shastri, he would always go on. The ISKCON, it was conceived in Jhansi, and the midwife was Agra, because Gopal Agarwal's father from Agra, he sent Prabhupada to America. He said, conceived in Jhansi, midwife was Agra, and delivery was in New York. Dr. Shastri always used to tell this. He said, no, this is, conception was here, delivery was done in New York, and midwife was Agra. So now we continue with chapter 8. New Delhi, crying alone in the wilderness. I have got the clue of going back to Godhead just after leaving my present material body. And in order to take along with me all my contemporary men and women of the world, I have started my paper, Back to Godhead, as one of the means to the way. Please don't think of me as something wonderful or a madman when I say, I shall go back to Godhead. after leaving my present material body. It is quite possible for everyone and all of us. From a letter to India's President, Mr. Rajendra Prasad. When Abai arrived in Mathura, he sought out Keshava Maharaj, who was now establishing his mutt, and presented him with the deity of Lord Chaitanya. That Lord Chaitanya deity is still there. I don't know what the situation. Last time we sent someone to check it out, the city had condemned the building and they were tearing down that building where Keshavji Gaudiya Math used to be. So what the situation, I haven't been there for years, so I don't know what the situation is now. But whenever you see the altar, there's two Chaitanya Mahaprabhu deities there. As far as I understood, there's the very large one with one hand raised in the sky. That is the one that Prabhupada donated to Keshav Maharaj, who later became Prabhupada's sannyas guru. At Keshav Maharaj's request, Abai agreed to stay there and edit the Gaudiya Patrika. Abai was given a room, and for the first time, aside from brief visits, he lived in a mutt with his godbrothers. As a senior experienced devotee, Abai held classes and instructed the brahmacharis, who were young, uneducated, and even illiterate in the disciplines of devotional service and the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita. He had only recently begun his duties when Bhakti Saranga Goswami, another sannyasi godbrother, asked Bhaktivedanta Prabhu to assist him in Delhi at his ashram, Gaudiya Sangh. Bhakti Saranga Goswami also wrote some articles for old Back to Godheads for Prabhupada. He's the one who established that mutt at Imli Tala. Unfortunately, since Gaudiya Mutt was busy fighting one another, most of the Leela places are taken up by other people, and just like Mor Kutir and so many places by the Nimbarka Sampradaya, and so many places are taken over by this. There's like Haridas Thakur Samadhi, the Nitai Gaur Radhe Shamwalas have that place. They were busy fighting. Somehow, Bhakti Saranga managed to get this place, Imli Tala, where Lord Krishna chanted under that tree, that Imli tree. Imli means tamarind tree, and chanting Radha's name, Radhe, Radhe, Radhe. His whole body turned blackish. Golden, like Srimati Radharani. And Srimati Radharani and the gopis came and they saw this golden personality. And Radharani was so shocked. Her ecstatic love that she felt for Krishna was blossoming, seeing this golden personality. And she was astonished. And she realized that only Krishna could make this happen to her heart. And she came there and he said, yes. Krishna said, taking your bhav and your luster, we will appear together in Kali Yuga to distribute the holy name of the Lord and Krishna Prem. This is the first indication of Mahaprabhu's appearance. Later, when Mahaprabhu came to Vrindavan, now Chaitanya Charitamrita clearly mentions he stayed at Akrurbat, and he used to come, not Akrurbat, Akrurgat, and he used to come every day to Keshi Ghat and wander down the bank of the Jamuna to Imli Tala. Somehow there's one place on the Prikrama Marg that they claim is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Visram Stal, but there's no evidence. I haven't seen, nobody showed me any book evidence that he stayed there. And although I don't doubt that there's a huge banyan tree there that they claim is his, I don't doubt that must have been there when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was here 500 years ago, because that's an old banyan tree, but there's no evidence anywhere. But anyway, they have that place. But Chaitanya Charitamrita specifically mentions he stayed at a Kurgat, he came to Keshi Ghat and wandered down the bank of the Jamuna to Imli Tala. And in Imli Tala, sitting under that tamarind tree, he would chant, Krishna, 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 and his whole golden body would turn blackish. So somehow Bhakti Saranga Goswami managed to get this place. It was just a tiny little temple, broken down temple. It was very sweet though and very intimate because of their Guru Maharaj's connection with Srila Prabhupada. They're always very friendly to the ISKCON devotees. Had so many good experiences there. But there's a tiny little temple, hardly, from where I'm sitting to this camera, and not even that wide. It was just a tiny little shrine there. And then, while living here in Vrindavan, before my eyes, that tamarind tree dried up. Now they have this god-awful monstrosity covering it to protect it from the rain, but it just looks horrible. And one piece of it, just on the bank of the Jamuna, there's a place called Jamuna Kunj, made by the devotees from Chile, I believe. And they got a piece of that old Imli Tala. It looks just like, Mahaprabhu dancing. There's two branches like this. There's a branch cut off here, so it just looks like the head. And they've covered it with oil, so it's very black and shiny. Just looks like Mahaprabhu dancing in ecstasy. So I watched that poor tree dry up, and then before my very eyes, I watched them tear down the temple, and I would say, oh my God, what's going to happen? Because sometimes people take a place and they try to so-called improve it, and it just makes everything worse. Oh my God, what's going to happen? But one Kartik, I can't remember what year anymore, they inaugurated this incredibly beautiful temple. Just a jewel of the temple. So many beautiful dioramas, Mahaprabhu sleeping and dreaming of rasa dance, and then they have rasa dance going on. Mahaprabhu putting Haridasa's body in samadhi, is meeting Rupa Goswami at Kashi, not Kashi, Sanatana Goswami at Kashi, and I can't remember, all beautiful, the diorama all around the wall, all around the ceiling, and discovery of Radhakund, and dancing in Rath Yatra, and visiting Ballabhacharya in Prayag. Then outside, all around the wall, they have so many pastimes, because they say also that Radharani slipped on a ripe imli fruit underneath that tree. And she slipped and fell, and not only that, the alta, especially you see for wedding, the ladies, they put this red color all around their feet. That got smeared by the right imli fruit. So Radharani cursed that no imli fruit in Braj will ever ripen. So I've seen many imli trees in Braj, but they never get perfectly ripe. They're always very, So there's a picture of that pastime, and one branch of that tree went over to the property of the people next door, and they decided to cut that branch, and the devotees were crying, please don't cut it. Some king was there and his family, but they didn't listen, and when they went to cut that branch, blood came out. Then the king and his whole family got diseased and died. Now somehow or other they've managed to acquire that property, and they built a beautiful guest house there to go along with this place. So. And Mahaprabhu saving Chota Haridas from the Badaharis, and meeting Prabodhan and Saraswati. All these beautiful dioramas are along the wall as you go out. And Radharani being crowned as the Empress of Vrindavan, a place called Umarao, just on the other side, near Chatta, just on the other side of the highway, down the ways of the ways. And I mean, so many beautiful dioramas there. It's a very beautiful place. Anyway, when Bhakti Saranga Goswami, another sannyasi godbrother, asked Bhaktivedanta Prabhu to assist him in Delhi at his ashram, Gaudiya Sangh, both Keshav Maharaj and Bhakti Saranga Goswami recognized Abai as an accomplished writer and editor and wanted to work with him. It was accepted among Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples that A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhu was an expert preacher and writer, whether in English, Hindi, or Bengali. Now Keshav Maharaj wanted Abai to stay and work on the Gaudiya Patrika, while Bhakti Saranga Maharaj, who had to go to Bengal, was requesting him to come to Delhi to produce the Harmonist, known in Hindi as Sajjana Tosani. Abai was agreeable to Bhakti Saranga Goswami's proposition, and Keshav Maharaj consented, on the condition that Abai also continue to edit the Gaudiya Patrika, at least by mail. As an editor, Abai was in his element. He was happy to preach in cooperation with his godbrothers. Although Abai didn't consider himself an accomplished scholar or author, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had been pleased by his writings and had encouraged him to continue. And now these senior sannyasis of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati were turning to him for help. They were practically competing to see who would get the benefit of his services. Perhaps, Abai thought, this should be his life's work, serving humbly under the direction of his godbrothers. His ejection from Jhansi had been a kind of setback. At least it had left him temporarily unsure of how Krishna wanted to use him. But now his godbrothers seemed to be answering the question. Living and working in an ashram with brahmacharis and sannyasis was a way of life Abai had once considered too austere. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had remarked, better he live outside your company. But now he would either have to struggle alone with nothing or stay within the shelter of friendly portion of the Gaudiya Mat. Perhaps he could carry out his desires to preach Krishna consciousness within the ashrams of his godbrothers. Since he would soon be the editor of Sajjana Tosani, he began thinking of how to expand it. It was a scholarly Vaishnava journal, but cheaply produced and with a very limited circulation. He envisioned it as surpassing India's slick illustrated weekly. It should be more popular than Time or Life magazines of America. And why not? Krishna was no poor man. Abai thought of how he could start an ambitious subscription program by approaching the many prominent and wealthy men of New Delhi. Then, by Krishna's grace, he would soon be able to print color photos and use high-quality paper for Sajjana Tosani. He would give it his best effort, depending on Krishna. And while soliciting subscribers, he could take his book manuscripts and try to get them published. Dr. Alagappa in South India had wanted to publish his Gita Upanishad. No doubt there were many men like him, or perhaps Bhakti Saranga Goswami will be willing to publish Abai's works with funds from the Gaudiya Sangh. Abai soon received a letter from Bhakti Saranga Goswami's assistant, carefully instructing him how to travel in Delhi at the least expense. He was to travel by train third class to Delhi and from there take a tanga. Since tangas at the station gate charged too much, Abai should first walk about 100 meters toward the right-hand side of the station where he would find a cheaper one. Were he to ride alone, he should pay no more than 1 rupee and 12 annas. But should he... Nobody even remembers annas anymore. 25 annas was a quarter, and 4 annas was a rupee. I can remember seeing that. I remember when I first joined, back in the 80s here in Krishna Balaram Mandir, then somehow December and January is a time that the Bengalis travel for some reason. I don't know why, but somehow they, and I would see the donation boxes, they would fill up with little 10 paisa coins and 4 anna coins, I mean 25 anna coins. Now they're probably worth a lot of money if you can find one. But you should try to share the Tanga with another passenger. That would be cheaper. Keeping the crematorium to your left-hand side, the assistant instructed him. If you look towards the right, then you will be able to see our red flag and signboard written in Hindi and English. When you reach there, we will pay for the Tanga. At the Gaudiya Sangh, Abai found a disconcerting state of affairs. In the absence of their guru, Bhakti Saranga Goswami, the brahmacharis were quarreling and shirking their duties. And as a result, the preaching and donation gathering were being neglected. Cleanliness, deity worship, cooking, even peace amongst the devotees were very below standard. And like most of the mutts of his god brothers, the Gaudiya Sangh was poor. Abai had come thinking he would be editing a magazine, but he found himself contending with a group of quarreling neophyte devotees. He learned that the brahmachari responsible for giving public lectures had not done any preaching. The devotees had previously been holding kirtan in people's homes were now negligent, and the errand boy refused to run because he had lost his bicycle. Then a brahmachari handed a letter from Bhakti Saranga Goswami requesting him to take up the general management of the mutt. Inspire everyone to be engaged in service, this is the letter. Otherwise, I do not know how we are going to print the English monthly magazines. Since we don't have much money in the fund, and since the brahmacharis are quite careless, Akinchana Maharaj wrote that he is unable to take the responsibility of the management. It will be very nice if you could keep your eyes on these affairs. And Abai found other obstacles in trying to produce such an atosini. No typewriter and bad relations with the printer. In a few days, Abai received another letter from Bhakti Saranga Goswami telling him what articles to print, cautioning him not to change the essential elements in the magazine, and reminding him of his special duty. The letter: I have asked Akinchana Maharaj to hand over the keys of my room to you, so that you may use my room only for your office work. As you were there, you should try to maintain peace in the ashram for giving necessary instructions to one and all. Okay. Abai saw that he could do no editorial work until the laxity and petty quarreling in the ashram stopped. But when he tried to help, as Bhakti Saranga Goswami had directed, some of the devotees rebelled and even wrote to their spiritual master complaining. It was against many obstacles that Abai met the publisher's deadline for the August 1955 issue of Sajjanatosi. Yet owing to the printer's delay, the magazine did not come out till September. When at last the first copies were delivered, Abai sent several to Bhakti Saranga Goswami in Calcutta asking for his response. Abai never heard from his godbrother directly, but received further instructions from Bhakti Saranga Goswami's secretary, Brahmananda, who pointed out the various mistakes in the issue, without mentioning whether Bhakti Saranga had been pleased with it. The errors were mostly technical matters of style. Abai had done the contents page in a different way, and he had not printed Bhakti Saranga Goswami's name exactly as he wanted it in all his articles. Regarding Abai's request for a typewriter, Ramananda wrote that if matters are distinctly written, there is no necessity of them being given to the printer in typewriting. Abai wrote to Bhakti Saranga Goswami requesting him to return to Delhi and establish a peaceful atmosphere in the mutt. Regarding Sajjanatosini, Bhakti Saranga had suggested that the paper for the cover be improved and the whole magazine be done on nicer paper by an up-to-date press, and Abhay agreed, but improvements depended on money. The letter. The suggestion that the paper may be printed from Calcutta is all right, but my suggestion is that either in Calcutta or in Delhi, we must have our own press with good equipment so that we may be able to broadcast the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in all the important languages, especially in Hindi and English. Hindi is meant for all India propaganda, while English is meant for worldwide propaganda. Abhay further reported that since it was almost impossible to expect a printer to work speedily from handwritten manuscripts, he had already rented a typewriter. He also mentioned his ideas for increasing the number of subscribers. So, I think we'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki. Anybody has any questions or comments? Oh.